prayers will be answered. I really don't blame murderers, rapists. I don't blame anybody.
How do I develop more masculinity?
When you look biologically, we're all women.
He's taking a lot of this medicine. How does it affect you?
Something happened and humbled me.
I see somebody is very masculine. I'm like, that's too much to me.
Now you have toxic masculinity. Find your highest joy and commit to that.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode. My guest today is my good friend Rob Recker, musician, medicine man, spiritual teacher, and many, many more. I call you a spiritual teacher because I think you are one of the smartest guys I know. And I learned a lot from you. Thank you for coming back to the show. We did one with you about a year ago.
Yeah.
I missed you a lot.
It's great to be back.
Yeah. So we're going to play some music today, talk about masculinity, relationships, spirituality, and of course plant medicine, because we cannot do without plant medicine. So, year ago, how did your path evolve since we last spoke?
Wow. Well, a year ago felt like I was just really deepening, just not beginning my Dharma, but it was like level 1 activation of the Dharma, you know, and especially the biggest change was having my woman with me.
Yeah.
And so feeling like I have my queen by my side. At that point, it was probably 6 months or so, a little bit more into that. And so having a whole nother year of serving, there's been these interpersonal dynamics that have just increased, kind of a confidence. There's been enough time to really have the nervous system relax and integrate, knowing this person is here, we're doing this work, this is what we do. Not that there was much questioning for me then, because I knew, but it's just solidified that much more, where eventually you get enough feedback that you can just settle into it. You don't need the feedback. You're not reliant on that. You just know that you are here to do, God's work. Essentially, you just do what your service is, and you know that it's good enough. You don't need to prove that. You just do your job and go about your business.
Wow, you're such a great couple, because every time you're in the ceremonies together, you're just adding to each other so much. And it's hard for me now to see you by yourself and your partner by herself. I think you guys are so attached to it, and you're doing different work, but in the package is like amazing.
Yeah, that's how I feel too, is I feel her absence, and I know I can still do some of this work without her if I have to, but my preference is always with her. Let's just be real, I can't be the divine feminine the way a woman is, you know, and that'll just always be the case in this body, so I can't replace her ever,
Yeah, I mean, beautiful. How does your music career evolved since we last spoke? I know you play everywhere now. If you look at your Instagram, you're everywhere.
Well, moving back to Ubud helped a lot. Being an hour and a half away, it just made me more discerning on my commitments there and opportunities, because it just was such an investment to scooter all the way up for some gig. And now I just feel like, also I've written a lot more songs, and that keeps me inspired. As I keep writing more music, I'm more inspired to share the new stuff that just reflects maybe a newer state of consciousness, or not that the old songs are invalidated, but it's fresh and exciting for me as well.
Yeah, all right, we're gonna play some new songs today.
Oh yeah,
I think we should start with one, and then add them as we go. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
She will be heard, her prayers will be answered. She speaks without words, through tears and our laughter. It's heaven on earth. Continue the work, For who came before us and all that come after. She will be heard, her prayers will be answered. She speaks without words, so tears in our laughter. It's heaven on earth. Continue the work, for who came before us and all that come after. And all she needs, and all the mother's asking, is for all to be free in a love that's everlasting. 'Cause she will be heard, her prayers will be answered. She speaks without words, the tears in my laughter. It's heaven on earth. Continue the work, for who came before us and all that come after. It's a love that we're after. It's a love ever after. It's a love that we're after. It's a love ever after. It's a love that she's asking. It's a love everlasting. It's a love that we're after. It's a love ever after. It's a love that she's asking. It's a love everlasting. And all she needs, and all the mother's asking, is for all to be free in a love that's everlasting. 'Cause she will be heard, her prayers will be answered. She speaks without words, through tears and our laughter. It's heaven on earth. Continue the work, for who came before us and all that come after.
Wow, I think that's one of my favorite songs now, and I heard it a couple times. How did it came to be?
You know, typically I start with a melodic riff, and I really, because to me, I never actually listened to lyrics much. There's still so many songs I've heard 100 times, and I don't know what the chorus is saying. I'm just oohing and on. And the music, for me, just already carries a message. It has words built into it. It has all the emotions. And so oftentimes I will re-listen to a riff and tune into how it feels emotionally, and then I'll attempt to start crafting words that fit that emotion and weave together a nice story or a message. And then oftentimes I'll envision, if it's specifically a ceremony song, I'll envision myself in circle, in ceremony, and I'm receiving this song myself. What would I want to hear? What's going to lift me up and carry me through the journey?
Yeah. And how does, for people who don't know and haven't done ceremonies yet, how does the ceremony song differs from the song?
Well, you know, they call it medicine music for a reason. For me, I think it's really intentionally crafted with ceremony in mind, where you're extremely vulnerable and there's a soundtrack that is going to be the wind in the sails, really moving the energy.
Yeah.
And so there's just a really high focus on that intention and how is this going to hit the heart, you know, and maybe sometimes the music is even crafted on medicine or deeply interwoven. And so it's just a song that it doesn't need to touch on the dark so much. It doesn't need the counterplay because our life is already so challenging. So oftentimes it's really embedded with solutions and an opportunity to shift our perspective back to our natural, highest, loving self.
Beautiful. Yeah, those songs, they penetrate the soul, as I call it. And I remember we did a Kambo ceremony where it was pretty intense. And then as soon as you start playing, I start enjoying the Kambo, like usually people
Mm.
don't do. But I was like, it's so good. Keep on playing. Let's enjoy it. And then he gave me a little bit more dots of Kambo and I stopped enjoying it. But the thing is that this music just puts you in that state of mind, like meditative, trance state of mind that is like the words are so deep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen with a lot of music.
It doesn't seem to as much. And I think there's a big part of it is in the transmission itself. You know, you can have 100 people singing the same song, or I could sing the same song 100 different times. But if it's coming from a pure place, then it has a tendency of being reflected in how people receive it, because there's less of me present ideally and more of just the purity. It's as if people aren't even there and I'm just really singing to the universe, and the purity of that, the egolessness, if in a way of like just getting out of the way, there becomes a purity. And I think people just resonate with that frequency, you know, which can be done through podcasts, can be done through talking, through eye gazing, through all kinds of things. But it's the purity, if just by nature of definition, has the easiest way of being received, because there's nothing you have to sift through in order to receive the essence, you know.
I guess why it's so hard for people to receive, in your opinion, because there's purity around them. They can go and they can listen to pure music, but not a lot of people these days receiving, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and that's a big thing with the container, like the set and setting aspect, is setting up the space where people have a chance to drop the defenses, remove ahead of time. Kind of a prerequisite is going into it with the right mindset, being able to speak to things, feel more comfortable, feel as safe as possible, so that you're not having to work so hard in the space, but you can go right to the natural connection of being enjoyed and celebration.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You did a lot of ceremonies, and we did wake up few souls together, few very remarkable souls over the years since we last
Absolutely.
spoke. What do you do to wake up your own soul?
For me, I feel the two biggest things are, for one, my partnership. My partnership seems to be one of the deepest reflections, opportunities, mirrors to see myself. And, you know, the person you're with the most has the greatest chance of seeing you at all parts of your cycles. And so that work becomes really being honest with what your energy levels are at, how we've not been attending to our own needs, and seeing that reflected in how your partner is feeling your energy, you know. And so partnership, and then also in ceremony, for me, being, once I'm in my dharma, which I am now, it's about deepening that practice, which really is like, ceremony is a reflection of life, in the sense that it's not a job. It's, you're striving to be centered and keep coming back to center, and you're not claiming to be perfect, but this is the practice of life too, right? Is coming back home as often as we can, as gracefully as we can. And that's what is required in ceremony to facilitate, is striving to be as consistent in that space of pure service, not making it about yourself, you know. And so that's that refinement process is my,
I think you do it very well.
well, thank you.
What ceremony that you facilitated or you've been part of had the most impact on you during this year? Because I know you had a few really impactful for yourself, so maybe you can describe some.
I would have to say the one with us fairly recently was pretty impactful, just because I had my own humbling moment in it. And I really love being human. I feel like I have a solid self-practice of humbling myself and not taking credit for things, but if something happened and humbled me, then I must have needed to be humbled. And so for me, that felt really beautiful, to have my partner be able to hold the space while I was fluctuating for a little brief moment there and holding on to the drum for dear life. And so that impacted me, of just that awareness that we all need help, you know, that nobody's, like, I view it as a horizontal hierarchy, not a vertical one, you know. We're all in the same playing field. And so that was really beautiful. And then, I mean, every ceremony, somebody's just receiving something so profound that it's kind of like the last ceremony becomes the most amazing one, because the work is getting done and people are feeling it and they're doing their work, and it starts to make the other ones fade a little bit more just because you're so present with what has just happened, you know?
Wow. Yeah, the one that we did recently was very epic. It woke up my soul for sure, which did not happen for quite some time. I feel that that's a good thing to speak about, that I used to have those beautiful experiences. And then I realized in my last ceremony how those experiences were hiding something that I could not go deep. That's why I always go and enjoy myself and have the fun. And I love the fun. But there are times you take the medicine for medicine. You need to reflect. And this time, as it shook you, it definitely shook me as well.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful experience.
And I love that. It's like we do need a healthy balance of work and play, you know, and ideally we learn to find play in the work as well.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was super grateful for that one.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Talking about your partnership, I think that's important. You talk about it a lot, and you are pretty much a role model for, I mean, everybody who sees you and Alexa. They're like, yeah, we like those guys so much. They have such a beautiful relationship. So there's something very special about it. How do you nurture it, and what do you do to keep a spark? Because I think that's the hardest thing for many.
Well, we're in such a blessed position to be working so intimately together in one of the most rewarding types of service, awakening souls. You know, it's what could be more beautiful than working with your partner, helping other people feel more resensitized, more aligned to their best self and remembering. And we get to be regarded as trail angels, just providing a little bit of nourishment as they continue their journey into back home, you know, and so much of the reward comes through that, but also making sure she has enough time for herself and honoring that. I really just find such a deep joy in honoring her moment by moment process. And that's just makes me feel so good. And I think that is inherently has romantic aspects to it. It keeps a spark alive when she feels truly loved and respected. So just trying to hear her for whatever she's going through as often as possible. And then like right after this, we're going up to Cinnamon for a little trip. So making sure that we do have that balance of work and play.
Beautiful. I think our friend Ahmed said it very well. I keep on thinking about his quote that he heard before when people were getting married and they'd say, "I'm going to love you until I don't." To me, that was very, very powerful. That's something that you shared, that you do need to reinforce the love every day. Otherwise, and when you don't love, then you just, your parts, you should part your ways. I think that's beautiful.
That's actually great timing because you mentioned we were going to speak about masculinity, and earlier today was my weekly men's circle.
Yeah.
And so the topic that came up organically was the topic of the one and the topic of agreements. And I think that there is something profound in honoring the sovereignty of each individual. Like for us, her relationship to her highest self, to Great Spirit, to God, whatever, is the primary relationship. And that's the same for me. And then from there, we can choose to come together. And honoring the sovereignty of somebody means you don't expect anything of them. You don't expect they're in their process. And 5 minutes from now, you have to renew that agreement. And I think expectation is the death of gratitude. And so if I'm expecting her to show up for me in a particular way 2 years from now, 2 days from now, 2 minutes from now, where's the gratitude for her period, you know? And so that's a big part of just scaling everything back, which is paradoxical. Like we want to lock the love down. We want to have a commitment. We do need to commit to some time frame to some degree, but at the same time, paradoxically, we have to honor that life is unfolding every moment and new information comes in. And if you're in alignment, you have to honor whatever that new information is and adjust accordingly. And so that means just presence every day with her.
Yeah, that's why I feel like society, they have marriage for a wrong reason. I believe that the marriage is a beautiful thing when people really want to have this connection to be married. There's other legal aspects that are good, to be married.
Totally.
But in the end of the day, people who think that, okay, now I locked somebody in because we're married, it's you're doing things for a wrong reason.
And it's, to me, I very much see a parallel with religion, where underneath it all are natural desires, tendencies. We want to be seen. We want to have trust. We want to have family, want to be able to rely on something. But at the same time, you can't use that to remove yourself from the present moment and to honor what is actually right now.
Yeah, beautiful. So masculinity, I think that's a topic that is very hyped right now. There's like this, I hear the word Andrew Tate. You have like this masculinity. We own women, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what Andrew Tate does. I don't listen to him. But I just hear what people tell me about him. But I assume that's not what masculinity at least means to you.
Well, so one of my practices is acknowledging that people can speak the truth at any given moment, no matter what they've said before, no matter who they've been, what they've done. Just like if I've spoken truth for 5 minutes, there's no guarantee I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth 5 seconds from now. Yeah. And I've heard a few random things that he said, acknowledging and observing the differences of men and women in our roles. And I've resonated with some of that. But then there's always the energy behind how someone's communicating, where it's coming from, and all these subtleties that make up communication. And so, yeah, for me, masculinity is, if we distill it down to its essence, it's like our God-given role to be guardians, to be protectors and providers. And that doesn't necessarily mean that a woman can't work. It just means that we are really here to use our strengths to benefit the tribe. And the first tribe is family, you know? And so that's, I think, why we have testosterone, is to be able to do some of the heavy lifting, do the hunting, for the most part, do the kind of thing of going out into the world, stalking, bringing it back to the nest. And I think there's something very natural about that, wanting to provide and the fruits of our labors. We want to give it to the women, and we want to give it to the children, and we were always naturally tasked with that.
Yeah, beautiful. So how do you, I'm going to start from myself. I find that every person has feminine qualities and masculine qualities. For me, I was raised by a single mom, so masculinity, I never had like a great example of masculinity, because my dad was present maybe once a week. He's a great dad, but he was like a role model for masculinity. I had a lot of feminine energy around me. So for me, sometimes masculinity, when I see somebody is very masculine, I sort of step back. I'm like, that's too much to me. I don't know how to handle this person. Like I cannot connect. The energy for me is too hard. But on the other hand, I do want to be masculine. I appreciate people who have those masculine traits. So for somebody like me, how do I develop more masculinity, let's say?
Well, so often the connotation with masculinity is kind of a purely physical thing. And so even when I'm saying protection, safety, providing, that still applies on emotional and mental and spiritual levels. And so that's a very masculine trait, is like our analytical process, our ability to use logic and reason in certain ways. Like, it's good to be problem solvers, but if we're viewing a woman feeling something, here's we see it as like a challenge, an opportunity, a problem. How do we solve it? And the solution is for her to be received, is to tune into her and what she wants. And that's our skills as like farmers and hunters in the physical realm, is to be actually good listeners and to work with the cycles of nature, observe the tendencies of things around us. We need to know the cycles. Is this indicating that there's trouble on the other side of the hill, or the crops we need to provide, and I'm noticing this. So we can take all of those skill sets into the emotional and mental arenas, where we're identifying the needs that our women actually have, and then we apply ourselves in that way. And so you're providing a sense of safety just by listening and not providing opposition, not trying to be the problem solver, but because that might be the problem. And then so the real solution is found in receiving somebody. And so I think that's a good practice of masculinity. For one, is honoring the ways that we already are masculine, instead of approaching it or comparing ourselves to some big beefy guy, and now you have toxic masculinity and all these different genders and all this distortion, when really at its core, a masculine energy is a giving energy, whereas feminine is receiving. And so being attentive to how we give, is it actually adding to the environment or not? How am I giving to my woman? Is it being received, which what she naturally wants to do, but am I giving in such a way that she wants to receive it? Yeah. You know, so some of these masculine practices, but also it is good to move the physical body and to have some sense of being in shape in case we need to chop wood and carry water and do the basics, you know what I mean? But yeah, a lot of masculinity is really in, because I love the words, the material is the matriarch, the pattern is the patriarch. And so our pattern recognition, we are creating a pattern, we're organizing the material into a coherent pattern. And so that has to do with, if you apply it on, like in our home, we want to, that's what providing ends up coming into with resources, is we're scanning our environment and figuring out how can I, in a integrous way, bring resources to my family. That's an organizational thing. That's a pattern thing. Or we're observing our woman's cycle and noticing the patterns there. And so there's our paternal edge of honoring, okay, she's in this part of her menstrual cycle. Yeah. Let me give her space. Let me be extra sensitive. Let me get her chocolate. Yeah. Just, and so all these things are already masculine.
Interesting. So the perception of masculinity is not necessarily right. We have this conditioning of what masculine means. Strong, and I just solve problems, I'm not vulnerable, I don't cry. This is a masculine. Whereas in reality is pretty opposite. You're able to listen, you're able to relate, you're able to support.
Yeah.
Is that...
I do feel like all masculinity is literally built on top of femininity. Yeah. And when you look biologically, we're all women, right? So we're all the woman, the female template. And it's something around 40-something days we're shot with testosterone, where now the body decides it's going to be masculine, which is why we have nipples.
Really?
And so we're all in it. You look at the symbol, the symbol X, the chromosomal symbol, that actually contains the word Y, the letter Y. Yeah. And the word woman contains the word man. We as men come from women. And so take the most masculine example we have of like the big savage warrior who's the tribe provider and guardian and hunter. His skill set is completely based on being an amazing listener, being maybe perhaps the best listener, hence his ability to actually tune into the jungle. What are the threats? How do I achieve this end? It's not through a conquering of imposing one's will with utter disregard for the environment, but actually working harmonically resonant with what's already happening. And the only way to be in a resonance with what is going on in your environment is to have listening. Yeah. And listening is inherently a receptive act. So the most masculine things that we can do to be in an alignment and to be powerful all come from listening first, which is inherently feminine. Yeah. And so I think that's what provides a solid, healthy masculine, is that awareness that we're always most validated with our mom, with our partners, with the woman that feels safe. There's such a deep soul validation that happens when women trust us, as opposed to, let's say, oh, your brother's like you and good friends and all this. But when a woman trusts you, it hits a little different. Yeah.
Can a woman have masculinity?
Absolutely. I think, like you said, I think everything has the polarity within it, you know, even down to on cellular little particle size, there's the negative charge, there's the neutral charge, and there's the positive charge. And I think everything contains that. And it really is about balancing that, acknowledging the tendencies, acknowledging our testosterone, but yet we still have to be feminine. You can't have anything in this world without the material. The material is what creates the world. Yeah. The pattern is what differentiates you from me, this microphone from the ground. And so both are present in all aspects of life.
Yeah, beautiful. There are many ways we can go from here. I mean, the question I keep asking people, and I'm curious to hear your answer, so we're going to go deep now. What is consciousness?
Wow. Consciousness might be simply the whole I am that I am type concept of, or I think, therefore I am. Although, does the table think? Does it not have consciousness? I think consciousness is potentially all that is, and it has a wide, full spectrum range of how it expresses itself. But existence seems to be consciousness.
Carried within the trails of golden beams, the day returns and earth receives a seed. The fruit then grows into awakened dreams. We sing these prayers for all humanity. Carried within the waves of flowing streams, the night arrives and falls so peacefully. The light still shines and calls for all to see. We sing these prayers for all humanity. Rising through the heights, across celestial streams, and my spirit's taking flight across a mystery. In these rays of love I feel, they dance across my skin. And I know I need to heal, and so I let it in. These rays of love I feel, they dance across my skin. And I know I need to heal, and so I let it in. Illuminating, 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 illuminating.
What a story behind that song. I love it.
Well, there are these moments that just happen. The creative juices start flowing, and before you know it, there's this guitar part. It originally started with Alexa finding a little piece of this poem, and she just thought that would make a good song. And then within a half an hour to an hour, the song was already done, and chords came, and it all just showed up and just sat there crafting, and it's just so powerful. I love singing it with her more, but you know, it's a nice new song. And I remember crafting the part where I know I need to heal, and so I let it in. I was actually envisioning a ceremony that was about to take place, and I was imagining a brother of mine that I felt that would hit him
Yeah.
and just what he specifically would need. And ideally, it's universal. Obviously, we all need to let the love in. But it was really inspired by anticipating singing that to him
Wow.
a few days later, which did happen. And of course, the moment was perfect. And
Wow.
yeah,
How did he receive it?
oh, very well. He almost disruptively, because he just kind of kept yelling out, "I love you, Rob and Alexa." It was so cute, you know.
You probably hear it all the time. You just walk on with everybody screaming, "I love you, Robert Alexa."
Well, we're doing all right.
Yeah.
We love people too.
I guess a question I'm curious about, and many other people curious about, that I talk about Rob, everybody was like, he's facilitating lots of ceremonies. He's taking a lot of this medicine. So my question is, how does it affect you?
Well, back to that masculinity thing, I think like not every man is meant to be the warrior. There's so many jobs that need doing as a tribe, which we naturally are in a community, you know, and or naturally supposed to be. Some of us are starting to form communities again, but there's so many roles, you know, and I feel that I've always been that archetypal warrior type energy. And so things, as they get intense, even down to funny examples of like, we could be driving somewhere and a loud noise happens, my body doesn't jerk.
Yeah.
It was meant to just process. Things go slower. And that was reflected in being an athlete when I was younger. And I'm still athletic, I'd like to think. But so it just feels like it's my constitution. I don't recommend it for everybody. I don't naively or arrogantly think that I'm the comparison for any other man. We all have medicine for each other.
Yeah.
And so I just know what my role is. And for me, I just absolutely love it. I will make ceremonies happen to accommodate. If I feel really called that somebody has shown up, and like that happened the other day, he was leaving Bali and 2 days after, and nothing was planned. And I just felt his genuine passion and the calling and all of it. And so it all flowed and came together. And yeah, I do need rest like anybody else, you know, but my love for it just allows for me to keep going, I think.
I really respect you for you doing this service, because I believe that's a service. You're serving people through what you do. But I'm thinking for your own self, you're putting some of the most potent stuff on earth in your body pretty consistently. Is a time where you're afraid that it might just, I don't know, take hold of you or anything like that?
Not at all. I think that's what being in service really is in many ways, is there's a confidence, like through experience, that you trust. You ultimately trust, and hopefully backed by experience and skill, you know, integration and such. But I trust that I'll be able to show up. I trust the medicine will be there. I have a deep trust with it will all play out exactly as it needs to. So I don't ever have any fear. And there's a saying I like, there's no nervous in service.
Yeah.
And so when you're really truly co-regulating somebody and you're holding a certain frequency to allow them to step up and harmonize with that, you can't be uncertain about that.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise that's felt on all these deep subconscious subtle levels.
Yeah.
And so, and it, again, like in that work continuously requires humility. Otherwise that confidence can go into arrogance.
Yes.
And then that's coming through, and that's not an alignment, you know?
Yeah, there's quite a few people who, especially we're in Ubud, was like a mecca of sort of people feeling they're enlightened. And to me, I could be wrong, but I feel like if you feel you're enlightened,
chances are you're not.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Whatever you put labels on you is something that actually you need.
Totally. And I think that's a mark of a good person, is that you're constantly checking in. And that's what doing the work is about, right? You're not just assuming that you're going to be in integrity because you have this reflection or you have these experiences. Every moment is new and deserves another check-in, which carries back into the relationship of keeping the spark alive, is constantly checking in with our own relationship or to somebody else and acknowledging the energy as fresh. You know, whatever the contract was 2 seconds ago, Guess what? There's a new one this breath, every breath, you know. And so that's just an important thing to do, is to remain humble, is like the questioning. And only good people, which most of us are good people, but a good person questions himself.
Yeah.
How else are you going to ever know if you're out of integrity or not? If you just assume that you always are, that sounds a little ignorant and naive to me.
100%. Do you have any particular questions you like to ask yourself when you feel you're going a little bored and becoming too egoistic, let's put it that way?
You know, the universe has a way of checking me rather quickly. For one, having my partner, she's so sensitive to energy. She's such a pure angel naturally that the slightest distortions in my field are reflected back to me really quick and really intensely. And I want to be in alignment, and she's a great opportunity to practice that and shift. I think the more we raise our frequency, we expand our consciousness. In a way, we're expanding our awareness to extend far beyond ourselves, to incorporate how are you feeling, how is this person feeling, and we're able to account for just a wider range of places. And so that means that you're more accountable for how you're affecting an entire environment. And it's also that saying of with great power comes great responsibility. And so I think the path gets even thinner and thinner the more powerful you are.
Yeah.
If I become intense by what I think is 5%, it might feel like 500% to somebody else. And whatever indiscretions and misalignments I might have done a year ago, they had less karmic repercussions, but I'm a year wiser, a year ideally. And if we're signed up for this path of evolution, then the universe is not taking too kindly to you're making the same mistakes. You've had a year of knowing better, so we're going to make sure that we increase the intensity to get you back on path. And so it's almost like every day it becomes more and more intense to feel out of alignment, out of integrity. Especially because that expanded awareness reflects a sensitivity. So the more sensitive we become, the more accountable we can become, and the more sensitive we are to being out of alignment, you know?
Yeah. How to be more sensitive then?
Oh, wow. What a practice. Because we have all these books, we have all these things in theory. But for me, I like to feel like our lowest point is the more accurate reflection of who we really are.
Yeah.
And so in the heat of the moment, which is kind of what ceremony is designed to do, is to make an intense container what will truly reflect where your limitations are, where your edges are. And so I think those are the moments to really look at ourselves, how we respond to adversity, to tension, to challenge, to resistance, to all these things that push us. That's where the gold is. And so to be more sensitive is really like a practice. I do believe in Marvin Gaye, we're all sensitive people, you know, his song. And so it just becomes a practice at this point. Like this antenna, consciousness and this body combined, were naturally designed to pick up everything. And we have monks that show us, you know, that they have neurons or like electrodes attached to them, and they can feel the tiniest degree of humidity that gets shifted, or temperature, this and that. We can feel all these things. It's just, are we going to do the practices that remove the resistance? Are we going to take the time with our mind, since it's usually our mind has been given more attention than the heart throughout most people's life, so it has all this power that we've given it. Are we going to take that power back? Are we going to practice listening? Because ultimately everybody knows right from wrong. Everybody knows whether what they're doing is in alignment with creative energy or whether it has a destructive edge to it. And so it just becomes a matter of applying that more often. And that's a mental discipline thing in many ways.
I was talking to somebody about moral, like what's moral, and he said a really good point that I now subscribe to. He's like, it's how you feel. If you don't feel it's right, it's morally wrong. There are people who are, he gave that example of serial killers that do not have a bad karma because they might not feel is morally wrong. But if you cut somebody on a bike and you feel that you're not doing the right thing, this is where the moral comes. Like, this is where.
But here's where the catch is. Are we sensitive enough to feel how we actually feel? Or is it the mind telling us? And there's a big distinction between our true feelings and the mind's reaction and habit of conditioning of saying, no, it's okay, and justifying. And that's where I like the word justification, because justus and facere mean to make and right. And so if something needs justifying, you're trying to make it right, when inherently at its core, it was either vibrationally in alignment with creation in life and promoting life, or it was dissonant and geometrically misaligned with life. Just like a note is dissonant or it is consonant, you cannot make A and A sharp be harmonically compatible. They are not, unless you give them a huge distance. That's a whole nother musical theory thing. But like, essentially, you can't make something right. You at your core know, and if you go to justify, then it doesn't just stand alone in the truth, because the truth doesn't need to be convinced. It doesn't need any defensiveness. It doesn't need proof. It is the truth, you know? And so that's a trick, is like, if you're sensitive enough to feel how you actually feel, I do believe everyone knows right from wrong.
Okay. Then being devil's advocate to that.
Angel's advocate.
Angel's advocate, yes. If we go back 100 years, 200 years, people used to do some things that we now perceive wrong, morally wrong. But at that point, in their understanding and their level of frequency or consciousness, for many of them, it felt okay. Something that we're doing now, in 100 years, we might say, wow, these people are crazy. But we, let's say, somebody would give example, eating a steak. Right now we're eating a steak and we're like, well, I like my steak. I don't feel anything wrong with eating steak. Somebody might say, well, it's wrong, you're eating a dead animal. But then let's say in 100 years we understand that we can talk to animals, we can understand animals, we can have communications with animals, and they are saying, what the hell are you guys doing? And then when I was eating steak 100 years ago, was it morally wrong or not?
Well, the thing about that is that by the time someone is making these conscious decisions, they've already been inundated with the social constructs, the social norms, and most of the time that comes with heavy conditioning of desensitization. And so most of this would be a reflection of people not thinking and feeling for themselves, but being programmable and operating off of a program that was embedded into their system. And so I think, like, for whatever reason, my mind went to like a doctor trying to bloodlet the patient 100 years ago, 200 years ago, whatever, thinking maybe that will help. When that came about, in a way, was because it was experimentation. People weren't tuned into their body. They weren't tuned into what real solutions are, whether it's change your diet, all these different things that we could do. And I think it was a reflection of a lack of sensitivity that was taught, that we are all taught, because I truly feel that deep down we have the answers within each one of us. And again, there becomes the self-awareness practice of, is this am I operating off of a conditioning, a program that was given to me, or have I actually tuned into a natural program because I've removed the brainwashing, the conditioning that takes place? You know, is this an original thought that's unfettered and direct from a source energy, or is this something else? You know.
So I guess we're talking about, there are places where you don't know. So there are places you know things are wrong. You don't know if they're wrong or not. Probably if you don't know if they're wrong or not, they're probably wrong. And there are some things you just don't know. You don't know. You might be doing something new and you might be, okay, we have a virus, let's put a solution. And you might think that's a good solution. It could work. And you might have a good heart. But then, let's say in 10 years, you realize solution is not as good. And it, let's say, have some side effects. I'm not giving any examples. I'm just hypothetically talking about things. So if that's the case, was it a morally wrong decision or not?
Well, that's a funny thing, because when I take the biggest step back, this is how I feel about all people, is that we are simultaneously accountable, and yet no one is to blame because we are so programmable. I think all humans, I think all souls at their true nature desire to be loving and in connection.
Yeah.
And then we're subjected to a lot of energies that it's hard to say where's the origin of the darkness, the evil, the distortion that we're all subjected to, and as you have different people that remain connected to nature, they seem to have a greater happiness, joy, celebration. We've been living so disconnected from nature and our own true nature that we're desensitized, and so it's like, I think everyone's a good person.
Yeah.
And we've just been conditioned in so many different ways that we're able to do a lot of different things, justify it, or maybe not even need to justify it, but literally think this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's just a reflection of how programmable we are. And it's not a reflection on the person so much as the challenge we're all facing on Earth. I really don't blame murderers, rapists. I don't blame anybody. I feel that humans are subjected to a very malicious force that either is supposed to exist, either way it does. And I think we're all here attempting to either repattern it or find our way into connection despite it. And maybe that's part of the design of why we're here, is to face that adversity and still be able to find God, if you will, through the darkness. And it just becomes a beautiful opportunity. So I can't blame anybody but are they completely absolved for being programs that were programmed and act a certain way? Well, I think the karma is built in, because if let's say you're programmed and that program is literally a disconnection, you don't get to feel the light of the universe pulsing through you.
Yeah.
That's punishment inherently by nature of feeling disconnected.
Yeah.
And so in a way, it's like no one gets away with anything, because if that energy comes through you, you have to feel that, and you're suffering the consequences of it.
Wow. I love it. Beautiful. No blame. The last question I want to ask before we go to soulful questions. They were rapid fire, now they're soulful.
Nice.
About your tattoo. Tell me more. That's a new tattoo.
This is a new one. So essentially, each tattoo is a story or an anchoring of an experience. And so it serves as not only a reminder, but as, I guess, just a reminder is good enough, that it's meant to integrate the experience and just really represent different chapters of my life. And so this next one, I had the intention of, because I use my hands so much in a ceremonial capacity, whether it's drumming or the flute or the guitar or whatever, I really liked the concept of having the next level of my evolution represented with this work, and to have it be in my hands as a constant reminder of the commitments I've made, the work I'm choosing to do. It represents integrity to me, and to be in prayer hands and to have this image be there in symmetry, that's the humility that I want to embrace. And so this completely becomes, these are God's hands. These are hands of service, and it's meant to anchor that in. And that's why there's also the medicine woven into the tattoo.
Beautiful. Wow. I think we're going to talk about soulful questions now. Then we're going to play the last song, and then we're going to end at that, because I know you have to go soon to start your travel. I'm going to ask a few questions. Soulful questions means I ask everybody those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Since we last spoke, how did your routine change? Like your daily routine, nightly routine? What do you do to stay in shape, both your head and your body?
I would say there's still cycles that have taken place. And within that last year, I've had my own winter cycle and my own spring cycle. And I would say what has changed is more subtly the refinement process of the gracefulness with which I come back to center. Yeah. And so I think that that's how change is often measured. It's not that we don't ever do the same mistake again, but maybe there's less time that passes between the misalignments and the forgetting, and maybe less self-harm in that process of coming back home into our remembrance.
Beautiful. What were some of the beliefs you used to hold a year ago that you don't hold anymore?
I would say some things that might have existed was a willingness to judge people or to stay in that judgment longer. I just keep being pleasantly surprised by people that it just humbles me all the time. And maybe there was a few people I was just uncertain about, and then you get to see their heart, and it just makes you feel a little bit foolish for wasting any energy judging somebody instead of trying to lift them up. And then maybe some abundance mindsets where over this last year of ceremonies, I really feel the magic of what's going on, the alignment, this divinely guided element. And so I feel that my dream of eventually holding down a retreat center and being a main pillar for people to come and have a whole integration space and a one-stop multimodality shop where you leave absolutely transformed, that I think is even closer and more of a reality. And so there's a deeper trust.
100%. The last question. According to Rob Recker, how to live a happy and fulfilling life?
Oh, wow. You know, Bashar is this channeler guy, and I like his simplified version of follow your highest excitement.
Yeah.
Remove compromise as much as possible by doing what you truly feel, which again is based on being sensitive enough to know what you actually feel that you want to do, and what's your highest excitement. But find your highest joy and commit to that, and then you'll find that compromise starts to fade away because you're actually doing whatever it needs doing to achieve exactly what you're wanting.
Beautiful. We're going to play the last song and then we're going to go.
All right.
Before we go, if people want to follow you, how can they do it?
I would say Instagram, Rob Recker Music, and I will be going into the studio very soon.
Yeah.
And so there will be a Spotify reference. Maybe by the time this comes out, there will be something on there. But the time has come.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And before we play, guys, please subscribe because we're talking waking up souls and you can be part of this. And now let's get the music.
All right.
Please make me a vessel for creation's light. Please keep me protected through the darkest nights. May we walk in beauty. May we walk in grace, and may your love flow through me. For you I give my thanks. Please make me a vessel for creation's light. Please keep me protected till the end of time. May we walk in beauty. May we walk in grace. And may your love flow through me. In you I place my faith. my love flow through me till the end of time. Make my love flow through me in the darkest nights. So please make me a vessel for creation's light. May we walk in beauty till